Rest, put me to the test, expect nothing less. You check as I'm chess, what's happening next? He got the venom, a weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson. He got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. Now leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill no discretion. Your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they're scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem.
Yo. Okay, I got the echo again. Huh? Dog good. Oh well, doesn't matter. Oh, I can't hear shit. There we go. So we're going to be doing Satanic Panic today. It's going to be fun. Also, we have an update on the Olympic concert. I didn't think I'd be talking about this 3 days in a row. I'm going to do a full video. I actually wrote a script for it. I'll be doing a full video on it maybe tomorrow. And you guys can get all the good stuff. You're also going to be doing a video on the Satanic Panic. I do a special topic video on that one as well. So anyway, let's get started. Let's get going. Here we go. Let's do it. Damn it. It's gonna drive me crazy.
Dungeons and Dragons. Some claim it's a simple, harmless game.
What do you guys think happened?
One of the players Robbie played with got carried away and killed him.
Well, that's kind of far out.
Mazes and Monsters is a far-out game. Swords, poison, spells, battles, maiming, killing.
Hey, it's all imagination.
Is it?
Stumble into the abyss of fire. You are no more.
I have a spell to save me.
There is no protection. You will burn forever and ever in eternal torment. You are no more.
Ha ha.
No.
Go. Game goes on. Roll.
Okay. That should do.
I've reached the deepest dungeon. I'm now Lord of the Little People.
There we go.
The treasure is in your sight. Power beyond imagination for the winner, to wield for all eternity.
I feel like I know that actor.
Fate turns her face against you. The dragon has you in its mouth. The dragon slowly opens its mouth.
No. I'll do anything. I must win.
There's only one way to save yourself.
You know, the uncompressed video is more scary than the actual game.
And that way is blood.
Blood.
Blood?
David, honey, I'll be right back.
Blood will set us. You may substitute their blood. Die off.
All right, so there's a bunch of stuff in here that we can...
The power.
All right, so there's a bunch of stuff in here that we can kind of unpack, but you know, the biggest thing, a lot of times what comes up in, you know, on the internet, on social media, even, you know, our own comments and our own...
I want to be very clear. This is happening today. This is happening right now with the Olympic thing. So yeah, yeah.
Own videos is, you know, this accusation of bad DMing, and we see it happen really quick, I feel like. And first of all, I just want to say that anyone that goes to the other side of the screen and takes the initiative to run the game for other people, you know, I think they deserve a little bit of leeway. Instead of just accusing them of bad DMing, let's remember that there's other players at the table as well.
As though that the more that I involved myself in the game, the more depressed I started to feel.
And a 7 charisma.
The dark shadows of the day soon crept into Mike's dreams as wild, grisly nightmares haunted his sleep.
I would see just horrific, awful, just bloody and horrible creatures hacking at my friends, and I would stand there and watch my friends
just had my phone
hacked apart, and they were just incredibly gory dreams. And I would wake up at night. You know, oftentimes I'd be so upset that I would not be able to sleep for the rest of the evening.
You know, I can tell the difference between reality and fantasy. Just about everyone I play with can.
Hi. No, we're visible. No, we're not doing that again. Here we go.
Going to join the Great Hall.
You can't. It's a trap.
I have spells. I'm going to fly.
You don't have enough points. I am the maze controller.
Maze controller?
Yes. And I have absolute authority in this game.
This accusation of bad DMing, and we see it happen really quick, I feel like.
You have eyewitnesses. For instance, one case, the parents saw their child summon Dungeons and Dragons demons into his room before he killed himself. Another case, the kid thought he had the ability to astral travel, coming from the Dungeons and Dragons game, that he could leave his body and come back. And he had rigged it up just according to the rule book so he could do it. He was surrounded by his materials and put a bullet in his head so he could leave his body, and he's never come back.
This is make-believe, and nobody's murdered, and there's no violence there. I mean, to use an analogy with another game, who is bankrupted by losing a game of Monopoly? Nobody is, because the money is make-believe, the property is make-believe.
Dungeons and Dragons is a real serious problem. But as we'll see in the upcoming few moments, the problems with role-playing games have moved far beyond Dungeons and Dragons.
Because in Japan, I've heard that they're really into the role-playing games where you don't just bash people and kill them. You go around and you gotta use your head and stuff. But here it's sort of half and half.
Kids are becoming acclimated to this very kind of thing, and I began to look through the instruction manual, and I see here how to cast magical spells and mage spells and cleric spells, and you go to the pages that it's listed on, in this instance page 41, and they have complete descriptions of how to cast spells and how to contact powerful spirits and how to use these spirits and these powers to overcome, obviously, evil or good, because there's both white and black magic in these books. We picked up another one to see if that was just coincidence, and it's dungeon magic here. And we look through again and we see in here casting magic spells, page 22, with a complete description, and it says here, each wizard has mastered a certain type of magic. When you meet a wizard, he will give you 4 basic elements of his mystical studies. So we have a wizard now teaching the children of his magical studies. And then here it says, it is important to remember that the source of all magic is the life force of the user. This is the teaching of the occult. This is exactly what we were introduced into in Star Wars and E.T., that there is some magical power, some life force that runs throughout the universe, and it is this power that we can tap into for either good or evil.
This force and the powerful mind is. Its energy surrounds us, binds us.
Nope, no
In
copyright.
Dungeons and Dragons, what you do is to create a fantasized universe of the mind in which expediency to achieve your goal is more important than any kind of moral frame of reference to your actions.
I have letter after letter where people took the pieces. Now, there's sixes involved in the pieces of the game, but they take the pieces of the game, they would throw them in the incinerator or the fireplace.
They've been talking about it in church. And they took my books, including my Deities and Demigods original edition, and they burnt them.
They actually burnt them?
They burnt them at a stupid church thing, and I...
Of our children. The pieces include white witches, wizards, necromancers, the clerics, that type of thing. It includes evil wizards. It's a white versus black witchcraft.
I don't think anyone is suggesting that your intentions originally in this game were any what you have.
This is not a great supercut. I'm going to skip to the next video, guys. I'm going to skip to the next video. Sorry about that. This was not a good opening. I thought it was going to be more fun, but it wasn't. This should be better. Well, you know what? While we're doing this, let's make sure it sounds good. Good opening. I thought it was going to be more. Yeah, we're good. Sounds good. Everything's good.
Horrifying would be an understatement. And if that sounds like a warning, then that's exactly what it's meant to be. It deals with the sexual abuse of children by satanic cults. And not only that, human sacrifices as well. We started investigating these secret satanic cults when a British Member of Parliament linked them with the ritual murder of children.
I thought this was Australia. What I saw was an Australia thing, was an AU. It's saying British.
This day and age, it sounded too far-fetched.
So as far as I understand it, the Satanic Panic, and like I said, I'm working on a video for it. It started off in the U.S., but it spread to Canada and parts of northern Mexico, and then eventually made its way to Australia. Apparently, it mostly missed the EU. I'm not really sure.
As did suggestions that the same thing might be happening in Australia. But then we met Teresa. She's only 15, and for 12 of those years, she's been the victim of relentless depravity. Teresa's story is both shocking and compelling, yet it's a story she's anxious to tell. But again, we should warn you that parts of this report may be distressing.
Friends of family and strangers and my family used to rape me. Make me abort the babies I had.
It would be hard to imagine more misery and suffering than what Teresa says she's had to endure.
And us kids would be made to do things with the adults and the animals, and then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice? Were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
On what scale do you think this was happening?
Enormous.
Did they ever find any bodies of human sacrifices? That would be the real question.
Far beyond what we've ever heard of here before.
Teresa's mother, Bridget.
You're talking about mass murder?
Yes, on a scale that this country's never heard
And again, did they ever find any evidence?
of before.
For the first time, Teresa is learning what it's like to live with love instead of fear.
Pretty low.
In this quiet English village, with the help of her mother, she's slowly repairing her broken life. Teresa is now 15, but at the age of 2, she was left in the care of this woman, the grandma she called Nan. And that, she says, is when her torment started.
Who was the leader? Who was the boss of the gang, of the cult?
At home it was my nan.
Your Nan made you have sex with animals?
Yeah. Like goats and donkeys.
The story of Teresa is a story almost too horrible to recount. A case of child abuse that goes well beyond the kind of things we normally associate with the abuse of children. In 27 years of reporting, It has to be one of the most painful stories I have ever had to tell.
How many men or how...
But is it true? And also, how much of it is perspective? Especially if she was that young. The first thing I want to do is find out if you can find the dead bodies. That's the first step.
How many people would have sex with you?
What, at one time?
Yes.
About everyone who was there, which must have been about 20. You know, from 10 to 20 people. If it was a big ceremony, it used to be 30.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing. Or smiling. Or having sex with another man. Or other men.
A chronicle of debauchery and depravity so horrific it's hard to believe. You have to ask yourself, could Teresa be just making it up?
No. I know what's true and what's not. No, I know what I saw.
Children don't make up elaborate lies.
Children make up lies all the time. I hate when people say it's like, no one can make up this story. Or this story is so incredible, it must be true. No. People lie all the time. No story is unfakeable.
Lies that this would have to be if it was a lie, which I know it is not. It isn't.
This couldn't be a terrible dream, a nightmare that you're reliving?
No. It's no dream. It's a nightmare, but it's not one you can wake up from. It's there all the time.
This really happened? You're quite sure of that?
Yeah.
The police don't think Teresa made up a story. Some of the cult members are to stand trial. 5 men have been charged with rape. As for Nan, the grandmother, she's 61 and lives in this council flat in South London. She's charged on 7 counts of aiding and abetting rape and 2 counts of performing abortions on Teresa. If you're finding this hard to believe, so did I at first. But then there are the medical reports, evidence of sustained sexual abuse. And there's this, a statement prepared for 60 Minutes by Teresa's psychiatrist. It says, in my opinion, Teresa's account is not the product of a psychotic illness, nor the figment of a fertile imagination. I believe her to be telling the truth.
I know what's true and what's not.
We also took Teresa's story to this man, therapist Ray Wire. He reads a transcript of our interview and listens to her voice.
It's no dream.
Few people, if any, in Britain have counselled as many victims of satanic abuse or Satanists themselves as Ray Wire has. If there is an expert on satanic cults, it would have to be him.
Do you believe Teresa's story?
I believe Teresa's story. It's exactly the same story as I've heard from men who says they've done it.
You've dealt with other cases like hers?
Yes.
21 cases like hers, he says, in the past 2 years alone.
Themes like they were put in boxes with spiders and worms, where they were trapped in fear, where there was a high use of excrement and urine, where there was talk of human sacrifice.
Take just one of those rituals, putting children in boxes with spiders and worms. Now, listen to what Teresa told her mother.
And they had a coffin-like box that children were put in with spiders and snakes and the lid shut and left in there. I would have come out deranged. I could not have coped with that mentally at all.
You have evidence to back up stories like Teresa's, that this is really happening?
Well, we have that age of child, 6.
Well, the abuse might have been real. Hey, Lisa. The abuse might have been real, but that doesn't mean the murders were real. You'd actually have to find the bodies. So...
5 and 4, giving information that ties up.
And you shouldn't be using a child, especially if it's a traumatized child, as your burden proof. You should be digging up grave sites, you know what I mean? You should be scouring that backyard or wherever it is the lady would have gone.
With Teresa, how do those children know? How do those children able to describe rituals, to talk about ceremonies, to talk about sacrificing animals? How do those children know?
Nightmares, imagining it?
You can't imagine those things.
You can imagine anything. Again, these kind of statements are so stupid.
at 3 and 4 years old, and you also don't have the evidence of anal sex abuse and oral sex abuse and all that other abuse.
The evidence in the abuse is something different. There could have been abuse, but that could have induced other delusions.
Clearly those children have experienced and endured.
During these ceremonies, was Satan, the devil, ever referred to?
He was called Lucifer.
What did they say about the devil, about Lucifer?
That killing the people made him happy.
Sacrifices to please the devil. According to Teresa, the worst rituals took place at a house somewhere in the country.
It was big, you know, expensive. From the front, it looked like a castle. You know, it had a long drive and big double wooden doors.
Do you think they were rich people then?
Very rich.
Now, where was this big house somewhere in the country? Teresa says she can't take the police there because the Satanists made sure she'd never know how to find it.
Teresa was always drugged, or on a couple of occasions she said she was knocked out, so that she never fully knew the route.
There was a tramp who was brought in once, you know, and he was killed. He was cut from his throat down to his stomach. And they ate him, or bits of him.
They killed a man at a ceremony?
Yeah.
In front of you?
Yeah, in front of all of us.
Did the tramp, did this man fight back?
Or then. Huh?
What little girl?
My little girl, Alex. She's about 4 now.
You mean you had a child?
Yeah.
How old were you when you had that child?
11. Yeah, there was 2, I think. Yeah, and
then what would happen?
well, after they killed.
He left the children.
You know, I'd be very interested to know if after all this time, if this has been debunked, this has been proven, there's evidence, there's what her perspective is of this after all these years. I mean, there's so many questions that a report like this is just irresponsible with. The lasting damage to the girl. Yeah.
The times I did, but my uncle, he caught me and brought me back.
Going to the police? Did that?
The baby was him and in it. And then there was nothing left.
As we said earlier, the police have already charged some members of the cult, and we know they're also investigating Teresa's accounts of those ritual killings. If there were as many as she told us, then the Satanists had a problem. How did they get rid of the bodies?
They had a tub, you know, pretty big, I don't know. A fairly big tub, and they used to put the bodies and bones in there. And it used to left. Oh, they didn't say.
The story, her account, doesn't really surprise you.
It doesn't surprise
that these things do happen.
In a forest in southern England without a head. We have no doubts that men can do that. The right to express evil. We said
it's addressed to the film crew. She says, "Thanks for bothering to help kids like me. I hope it helps." On the other side, there's a poem Teresa made up.
I'd fight.
We're also gathering evidence about the activities of such cults here in Australia.
Too many unanswered questions, too much sensationalism. Not good. Not a good report. Tragic, if true. Tragic, if not true, but still not a good report. All right, let's keep going. Oh, she just went straight away.
Things like naps, games, and Play-Doh sculptures probably come to mind. One thing that definitely would not is boiling and eating babies. At least, not unless you grew up in the 1980s, when reports of daycare centers engaging in satanic rituals were widely circulated and readily believed. People went to jail for years based on little more than a widespread conviction that the devil's minions were corrupting and sometimes devouring our children. It was a mass hysteria that grew to include Oprah, the Smurfs, and even McDonald's. It's the story of satanic panic, and it's next on this installment of Throwback. Welcome back to the series where we take a deep dive into some of the most fascinating pop culture stories and events you might remember from your childhood. I'm your host, Erin McCarthy, and this episode is a bit of a departure from the fun stories we've been telling you about how your favorite toys and games came to be. Satanic panic was a phenomenon that swept North America, and at the height of the craze, you basically couldn't open up the newspaper or turn on the news without hearing about subliminal messages hidden in rock music, pagan symbols in cartoons, or criminal trials involving teachers engaging in human sacrifice. As outlandish as all of this seems now, it was a very real concern back then, thanks to a mixture of urban legends, unqualified experts, and an overzealous media. And while no babies were actually eaten, the whole ordeal still managed to ruin a lot of lives. If there was any biggest cause of satanic panic, it may have been a book that came out of the otherwise eminently rational country of Canada. That's right, the same place that gave us international treasures Michael J. Fox and Celine Dion also opened the door to a decade of demonic conspiracies. Here's how. It's fair to say that Satan was kind of a big deal in the 1970s. Novelist William Peter Blatty scored a huge hit in 1971 with The Exorcist, a story of demonic possession that Blatty claimed was loosely inspired by a real exorcism performed by the Catholic Church. The book was followed by a film adaptation in 1973 that continued those claims and was so shocking that there were reports of people fainting during screenings. Films like The Omen and The Amityville Horror followed, placing the focus squarely on paranormal events that used religious iconography to make their stories more believable. Thanks to figures like Charles Manson, ritualized evil didn't seem that far-fetched. And with the general public having some idea of the occult, it wasn't hard for them to believe in a story involving Satanism and abuse. That set the stage for the 1980 book Michelle Remembers, where a psychiatrist named Lawrence Pazder detailed what he claimed was the true story of patient Michelle Smith, an adult who underwent over 600 hours of hypnosis to recall long repressed memories of being involved in a satanic cult as a child. With shocking stories of abuse, sacrifice, and demonic rituals, Michelle Remembers caused a stir, and was widely seen as a legitimate chronicle of a horrific underground movement. But there was a problem. While Pazder insisted Michelle Smith's memories were genuine, they didn't stand up to closer scrutiny. She said rituals took place in a cemetery in Victoria, Canada in the 1950s, but no residents ever reported anything strange happening there. She also said priests in this cult had to lop off a finger, but no one in Victoria remembered anyone walking around missing a digit. Even though reporters expressed some doubts about Pazder's book, it went on to become a huge success, and may have made subsequent reports of satanic activity more plausible in the eyes of the public. And there would be a lot of those reports in the years to come. One of the most common myths during the height of the Satanic Panic was the idea that family-friendly corporations were secretly in league with the devil.
Also, let's not forget razor blades and candy apples. That was a fun one.
These urban legends actually predate Michelle Remembers in some cases, and the earliest victim may have been Ronald McDonald. In October 1978, McDonald's felt compelled to publicly announce that franchise founder Ray Kroc was not a financial supporter of the Church of Satan. The story started when McDonald's got a letter from a woman in Ohio asking why Kroc donated 20% of the company's profits to a satanic cause. McDonald's dismissed the question as silly until more letters started coming in along the same lines. Before long, bags of letters demanding to know why the Golden Arches were part of a demonic cabal were arriving, and the company was forced to comment on what was probably their worst PR problem until the arrival of the McPizza. According to the Reverend John McFarland of the Kenmore Church of God in Akron, Ohio, a parishioner told him that she saw Ray Kroc admit to being a supporter of the Church of Satan on the Phil Donahue show. McFarland was shocked. He hadn't seen the show for himself, but he took her at her word and published details in the church's newsletter, Moments of Sunshine. Pretty soon, the story was in other church newsletters. Like a game of telephone, it spiraled out of control, with some believing that Kroc gave the Church of Satan 50% of the company's profits. Because people were opposed to the idea of buying Happy Meals if part of the proceeds went to the Church of Satan, McDonald's sent executives out to churches with sworn statements from television executives insisting Kroc never said those things. He actually was on the Phil Donahue show in May 1977, and the episode was repeated in June 1978, but at no point did he express a desire to financially support devil worship. McFarland published a retraction in his newsletter, but that didn't get nearly as much attention as the original rumor. Another major company to suffer from hearsay was Procter & Gamble, the famous household products corporation. Take a look at their old logo and you'll see 13 stars. Starting in 1980, word began to spread that the stars were secretly the mark of the devil. So many people believed this that Procter & Gamble actually set up a toll-free number for consumers to call and hear a recording assuring them that their laundry soap was not being used to support Satan. The stars were actually chosen back in 1882 to represent the country's original 13 colonies. Thanks to the rumor, however, Procter & Gamble soon got rid of the century-old logo. Throughout the 1980s, a number of children's characters were accused of being in league with the devil, or at least with what some called heathen gods. Thundercats was purportedly intended to promote Eastern
I remember this one.
He-Man and
I remember the Thundercats one.
Snake Mountain playset supposedly invoked demonic imagery because kids could use a microphone to deepen their voices and pretend to be evil. The Smurfs were blue and had black lips. That could be construed as being corpse-like, making the Smurfs members of the undead. Or I guess to be technical, members of the Smurf dead. Not even Rainbow Bright was safe. According to some interpretations, the beauty mark...
I mean, that one just, come on. We can use that. That one's an easy one.
mark on her cheek was actually a pentagram. But no toy or game took more of a beating than Dungeons & Dragons. First released in 1974, the tabletop game put players in the roles of heroes and sorcerers using magic spells to face off against various monsters. For those who believed popular culture was steeped in satanic messaging, this was all the proof they needed. The controversy grew even stronger in 1979, when a 16-year-old Michigan State University college student named James Egbert disappeared. Friends told authorities he was a fan of Dungeons & Dragons, which somehow led to investigators becoming convinced he had gotten lost in the underground steam tunnels near the college after getting too immersed in a gaming session. The truth wasn't quite so sensational, but it was tragic. Among other things, Egbert was apparently stressed over having advanced so far in school at such a young age. He was dealing with personal problems and had decided to run away. Sadly, he died by suicide not long after. But the story of his becoming obsessed with the game persisted, and a made-for-television movie called Mazes and Monsters was produced in 1982 that kept the narrative alive. Inspired by the Egbert case, it was one of the first starring roles for an aspiring actor named Tom Hanks. Parents grew so concerned over Dungeons & Dragons that one even formed a group called BAD, or Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons. The controversy hardly dissuaded people from playing the game, though. In 1982, TSR, which manufactured the game and its accessories, sold $16 million in rulebooks. For some, panic meant profit.
How did they become Wizards of the Coast? That's what I want to know. I got some videos up on the top of my playlist that I'm not using right now about Vampire the Masquerade's problems with White Wolf Publishing. I don't play enough Dungeons and Dragons to care about how they became Wizards of the Coast, but I'm still curious and I'm still interested to look it up.
Even if you're not familiar with Satanic Panic, you've probably heard of the idea that certain songs played backward in a technique known as backmasking reveal subliminal messages. Rock music was especially susceptible to those accusations in the 1980s, when bands like Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones were charged with hiding their support of the devil in their records. The whole concept of satanic messages being audible when music is played backward probably has roots in the work of Aleister Crowley. The infamous early 20th century
My homie. That was just fun.
occultists advised that you could train yourself to think backwards by, among other things, learning to speak backwards and even listening to phonograph records in reverse. In the case of one band, the possibility of hidden lyrics led to a lawsuit. In December 1985, two friends, 18-year-old
Just scare the Christians. That'll be fun.
Raymond Belknap and 20-year-old
No unforeseen consequences for doing something like that.
James Vance ended a night of drinking by agreeing to a suicide pact. Belknap died, while Vance was left with severe injuries. Vance's parents sued the band Judas Priest for $6.2 million because both young men had been fans of their music, and rumors persisted that hidden messages like "Do It" and "Let's Be Dead" were buried in songs like "Better by You, Better Than Me." The civil case went to court in 1990 with audio experts playing the songs backward and forward at different speeds. Ultimately, a judge ruled that the plaintiffs didn't prove subliminal messages were deliberately placed on the album, and the band wasn't liable. In fact, it's not really possible to write lyrics that can make sense when played both normally and backwards. When words or phrases are apparently discernible when something's played in reverse, it's really just the brain trying to make sense of gibberish. That might be why, when two evangelists from Ohio insisted in 1986 that the theme song to the 1960s television sitcom Mr. Ed contained demonic messages like, "The source is Satan," and "Someone heard this song for Satan," even they admitted it probably wasn't done by the producers on purpose. As silly as some of these examples are, Satanic Panic also led to some very serious and life-altering consequences. In 1983, one mother accused an employee of the McMartin preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, of molesting her child, triggering a massive investigation that went back 2 decades and eventually grew to include 7 employees of the preschool and 360 children who said they had been...
You know, tomorrow night, I think what we're going to do, instead of continuing on with this trend, even though I'm going to watch as much of this stuff as I can today, I think I'm going to look for the evangelical preachers who are preaching against Dungeons and Dragons. I'll try to find as many as I can. I think that'll be fun, to hear apologetics gone amok. So I can show an example of just how bad this kind of thinking is.
been abused. As the investigation continued...
That's what I was hoping I was going to get out of the 60-minute special from the Australia, but it was too serious and too dark that there was, even if the story ended up being fallacious 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road, there was nothing in the actual story to poke at without sounding like a monster. So that's why I didn't stick with that video, because there weren't enough claims of insane claims. It was mostly dark stuff, so it's too bad. Like I said, especially if any of it ended up not being true, and tragic for her if any of it was true. So yeah.
The claims of the children grew increasingly bizarre. Some said a teacher flew through the air.
There's no winner in
Others
that one.
claimed they were forced to witness the sacrifice of other children. At the heart of this sensational story was Children's Institute International, a child advocacy group that was responsible for interviewing kids about their traumatic experiences. While their approach to interviewing the children...
The interviews themselves, if you go back, so I'm familiar with this stuff also from psychology in high school and from sociology in college. We would actually watch the tapes and watch how the interviews would be done, and the interviews would be because they would take a long time. They weren't quick interviews. They'd be badgering the kid, but they'd be planting messages. Did this happen? Did this happen? How would this have happened? If this had happened to you, would this happen? And you're just slowly getting the kid to imagine a scenario that never happened, but you're implanting a memory into their mind that wasn't there. And it's very dangerous. And they do this with adults as well. A lot of these interview methods have been banned or have been reformed, but there are still police stations that use this stuff. So it's scary stuff. It's very dangerous, and how susceptible you are to this kind of suggestion is something that they like to test in these classes, especially in the entry-level classes and in your intro philosophy, intro psychology, intro sociology classes, and just to see how who's susceptible to messaging and who's susceptible to groupthink, and how susceptible you are at different parts of your life and for different reasons. So yeah.
Was not ostensibly intended to be coercive, many of the kids heard declarative statements like, "We know what happened, just tell us," and felt compelled to repeat or make up stories of abuse.
Compelled is the word.
Including details of satanic worship. If they refuted allegations, they might be told they were too scared to talk.
And that's why the accounts ended up matching, because the leading questions that were being asked were the same leading questions. So because it wasn't the kid had a reference to this other story, although sometimes that happened, but it was more that the adult had a reference to the other story, and they were implanting that story into this story, and that super implantation got mixed with the child's imagination, so it would build on it, and the next kid they'd add more. So everything got more and more elaborate until the story became too unbelievable, and there was no evidence, there's no proof to back up the story that the investigators themselves were building through the minds and imaginations of these supposed victims. Like it was truly a example of how mass hysteria and suggestion works.
In an interview with the Los Angeles Times in 2005, one man, now an adult, reflected back on his experience with investigators as a child. He said that he would be asked questions over and over again until he learned to give them the answer they wanted. And because he had siblings in the McMartin school, he wanted them to be safe. To a kid, it felt like doing the right thing. Many of these interviewing techniques were later discredited. No physical evidence was ever produced to support the kids' claims, and some later admitted to lying in order to tell authorities what they thought they wanted to hear. But at the time, the McMartin case was being used as a template. Other places, like Rogers Park Daycare, had employees arrested over accusations that they boiled and ate infants. Social workers involved in the McMartin case were cited as experts in such cases, lending them credibility. At least one police department even had a pamphlet for law enforcement to use when investigating suspected ritualistic criminal activity. The McMartin case lasted 6 years, the longest and most expensive trial in the history of California up to that point. One of the experts consulted in the case was actually Lawrence Pazder, author of Michelle Remembers. In the end, the defendants were all exonerated. But one, an employee named Ray Buckey, served 5 years in prison before the charges against him were dismissed. In a separate case with even more disastrous consequences, Dan and Fran Keller of Texas served nearly 22 years following convictions in a case that included accusations they served blood to children in their daycare, among other horrible acts. They were eventually released and declared innocent. The fallout doesn't end there. There's also been an untold mental toll on the children who were forced to discuss these gruesome scenes, as well as parents who spent years believing their children had been assaulted. All of it was due to a strong belief that kids were being subjected to horrible atrocities that didn't actually exist. Satanic panic persisted through the end of the 1980s, with television personalities like Oprah Winfrey and Geraldo Rivera devoting airtime to the topic. Always one for subtlety, Geraldo estimated that over 1 million Satanists were lurking in communities across the country, perpetuating the fear of the devil being just around the corner. But after the McMartin case was debunked, and the Department of Justice stated that there has never been any evidence of any ritualistic satanic sex abuse cults, the idea seemed to evaporate. Concerned parents went on to worry about other things, like violent video games. So why did Satanic panic endure for as long as it did? Some people believe it was a textbook case of mass hysteria, not unlike the Salem witch trials. Urban legends were able to take on a new strength because children were seemingly in danger. Other times, a lack of evidence meant people could believe what they wanted. After all, there was no proof Ray Kroc didn't donate to the Church of Satan. And while it might sound odd now, we're still telling a lot of the same stories today, from killer clowns to strangers lurking in back seats. Our next episode will be about a much more fun topic, I promise. And if you have an idea for a future episode of Throwback, pop it in the comments below. I'm Erin McCarthy. Thanks for watching.
Is connected to devil worship. That's the focus tonight of Lonnie Lardner's special report on Satanism. But we want to warn you now that some things you're about to see and hear might be too graphic for children. Lonnie.
Well, Terry, authorities tell us that the most serious or perhaps the most dangerous kind of devil worship comes in the form of underground cults. Most of them are very secretive, usually organizing clandestine rituals in the dark of night. Well, those ceremonies sometimes involve the sharing of animal blood to gain power, they say, but cult members believe their strength really comes from secrecy.
It's our secrecy that keeps us powerful.
And power, according to this man, is what true Satanists are guaranteed. Police and Sheriff's Department investigators say satanic cults often find that power in animal sacrifice. Photographs support their theory, and some self-proclaimed devil worshippers tout it.
The animal would bleed to death. It was painless because the knife was always very sharp, and you could cut it right. And the animal would remain alive for several minutes while its blood drained out with a jugular vein.
And then what?
Well, the ritual would work itself up to a frenzy in a head, and hopefully by the time all the emotion was spent out of the human beings, the animal was dead.
The most common thing in an adolescent murderer, for example, is having been abused, having been sexually molested or assaulted as a child. And very often these youngsters will turn that around and assault little children or animals. They'll torture, torment, kill.
When kids will do their sacrificing and their animal mutilation, they'll do it within a pentagram. They'll put black candles on each of the points of the pentagram, a grill over the top, and allow the blood to drip into some kind of container because they use it for bathing in or drinking.
Contrary to popular belief of Satanists being animal killers, we believe that animals and small children are the highest form of magic, and therefore it would be completely sacrilegious to harm these beings.
This man says he joined an underground satanic cult after a lifetime of having religion shoved down his throat. He says animal sacrifice took him to a higher place.
When you've got people looking at you like you're a god, and your parents treat you like, it does feel good. It gives you a feeling of power.
Tomorrow night, what drew that cult member to worship the devil and why many youngsters develop a need to control or hurt. Paul.
Interesting.
We had McGruff the crime dog and Smokey the bear to help keep us.
By the way, I love her channel. Go watch her channel. You're an ex-goth kid. Go watch her channel. She has great stuff. I got into her channel because I drink absinthe and she drinks absinthe, and I was looking for absinthe reviews. I didn't know that absinthe was a goth thing. I just happened to love absinthe, and I happen to be an ex-goth. Or, I mean, technically still a goth, but at some point, I'm in work clothes nowadays. Get back to it. Every absinthe review I found is usually a goth person reviewing absinthe. There's very few normal people reviewing absinthe outside of like Irish people doing try videos. So yeah, that was interesting. Anyway, let's keep going.
From fires and crack, so we were set. I'm in my 40s, and I know it kind of seems like a weird way to start a video, kind of a way of giving you my credentials to say, hey, believe me, I'm qualified to make this video. But it's actually more to highlight that if I'm able to say that at this point in history, anyone born around that time was really given a very unique set of circumstances that placed you at two defining moments in history that you both get to witness and experience at kind of the perfect times. I'll explain a bit. So I was born in 1979, and I'm kind of a cousin of the 80s, which means that I am 2 months older than the 80s. I was born in the tail end of 79, so 1981.
I was born in 1980. Oh, she's every girl I ever liked when I was a teenager, an early adult. Look at that. Just.
I was 1, 1982 I was 2, 83 I was 3, you get the gist. I saw the birth of MTV. We went to arcades. We had a rotary phone in our house. My first gaming system was an Atari. I played outside with my friends, and we all knew when to come in when the streetlights came on. If you were cool enough to have a remote control to your TV and not the dial, it made clicky sounds because the buttons were really hard to push, and everything was brown. Everything was brown. From your walls, they were wood panels, your appliances were wood panels, cars were wood panels, the remote was wood panels. The entire world was fake wood. And I know that there's this misconception that a lot of people have where the 80s is like this neon paradise. There were places that you could go that really were, that did embody that kind of look, but for the most part, wood, brown, everything. Everyone smoked. There were ashtrays everywhere. There were people sparking up cigarettes at doctors' offices, elevators, hospitals, everywhere. Nowhere was safe. Everybody smoked. The 80s were a very conservative period, and you would never know it by looking at photos and films of the era, the fashion. Those you saw looking awesome as hell, creating the best movies and music, they were the ones who dared to be different. The 80s were...
You know, it's funny. I'm having an argument right now, and they're Dan McKellen's channel, and I guess who I'm arguing with must be people, millennials or whatever, because... Like, you know, I'm talking about being a cinephile and how watching behind the scenes stuff is where I first saw the Feast of the Gods art. I believe it was either from True Blood or some other DVD commentary. Anyway, not the point. Old imagery has been used a lot. I've seen it in a bunch of stuff. And yet, they're arguing with me because I'm saying that Dan's wrong by him saying that the art has no reference to the Last Supper, and I'm like, no, art's multifaceted. It has reference. There's a ton of influences in every piece of art, and you know, I used to be the guy with blue hair and a tongue piercing, and yeah, I never thought of myself as a BMXer either. Like I always thought of myself as goth or metal or vampire-y or gangster at one point. And at one point a prep, and let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about the preppy and the country phase. That never happened. If anyone asked me directly, but you know, I used to be the kid with the blue hair and with the piercings and the sunglasses inside and just huge fucking muscles, dude. Like I was so big. So yeah, so. Like Danzig big.
Of conformity, and from the way you lived your life right down to your appearance. Every family had a station wagon. The husband worked a white-collar job, or at least everyone lied and said that he did due to societal pressures. And while some wives did hold jobs, the ideal tended to have the wife raising the children and caring for the home. They were involved in PTA, church functions, raising perfect little children, a reflection of their parents who got straight A's, extracurricular activities, never talked back or questioned authority, striving to be exact.
Yeah, it was all face. It was all surface. It mattered how things appeared. It didn't matter how things really were. So in your in-house could be terrible, but the outside, your outer life had to look perfect.
Exactly like everybody
And
else.
so rebelling with hair color or things that you couldn't hide was a big statement, huge statement.
There was no such thing as mental health in the 80s. And seeing a psychiatrist got you looked down upon, so if you truly needed one and got the courage to do it, it was a huge family secret. Don't tell anyone Denise is seeing a psychiatrist. You were either crazy of the bad kind and unfortunately depression.
Oh, I miss that. I miss that type of Chinese food. I used to love that stuff. I thought I could cook because I knew how to heat up these things. It's all that I ate for years. I was a latchkey kid on top of everything else. Oh, I loved it. I would eat that stuff all the time. That was my food. That was my dinners.
Fell into that category as well, or you were sane. No in between. So if you were not happy, you faked it. You did aerobics in chevron print spandex with diet sodas, Crystal Light, and ate cottage cheese.
If you were a guy, you went to a barbecue, you drank beer, and you talked sports. Maybe you talked cars, but the guys who talked cars were a little different than the guys who talked sports.
Cheese and canned peach slices off of half moons of iceberg lettuce and used teeth whiteners. Did I mention that everything was either diet or sugar-free back then? I also don't remember anyone ever drinking water, even in my house. If you ran out of iced tea mix, Kool-Aid, lemonade mix, or...
Yeah, even in the South, it was Lipton sweet tea, and sweet tea just meant there was extra sugar in the tea, so it wasn't healthy at all. You just pour this tea, and you just drink tea and lemonade all day. And then that was the healthy stuff, and then the unhealthy stuff but you know, the healthy stuff is the iced tea and the lemonade, and the which is a ton of sugar, and the unhealthy stuff was the sodas, but you could still drink the sodas.
insert random drink mix here. You were in drought mode until someone rushed out and got more before everyone in the house dehydrated.
Yeah.
The producers of the ephemeral films of the 1940s to the 60s, you know, the instructional films that taught you how to exist, with classics such as How to Be Well Groomed, or A Word to the Wives, and Changing Deviant Behavior. People who made those films, they were still going strong, and the products of being raised by those films were now full-scale adults in the 80s with kids of their own. You had a whole decade of people who looked down upon anything that didn't conform or was not cookie cutter as despicable, even evil. For those who dared to express themselves in a way that didn't fit the mold, they stood out or created and listened to different music. They were brave souls because the public were not kind, and it wasn't just their words that they expressed their discomfort at, what they considered your defiance with. Many were the subject of attacks, even worse. Some even convicted of heinous crimes that they didn't commit. So 1990, I'm 10. 1992, MTV introduces yet another milestone, reality TV. And we had reality TV before, but it was a bit different. It was in the form of things like Cops or Candid Camera, which was a little before my time, but they still aired reruns. And MTV introduced us to reality TV in the form of a show called The Real World, and it was the first of its kind, and it defined an entire new genre of reality TV that would dominate all of television as we know it, which is the television that we basically know today. 93.
I mean, this video is a little bit old because I think reality TV has kind of gone away as well. I mean, for the most part.
That was when the internet
Now
was
it's streaming.
introduced into people's homes. Suddenly, computers started popping up in random people's houses, and they would go on AOL, and they would be in chat rooms, chatting with people from here to Asia to England to Kansas. So being born at that time, you really got to experience a unique kind of set of circumstances.
I had when I was a teenager, I had an AOL girlfriend. I did. It's probably just the other guy my exact same age who also couldn't get a girlfriend. But I believed it. I believed I was amazing for getting a girlfriend.
Circumstances where we straddled two generations. We got to grow up as Gen Xers and then experience our young teen years and adulthood as millennials. Being a kid in the 80s, a big part of that was getting to witness firsthand Satanic Panic, which for myself was a very confusing time because TV, school, adults, they taught you to be fearful of people that looked in a very specific way, people who looked different. My parents looked like that. My dad had long hair and demon tattoos on his arms. His friends looked very much the same, the people that they surrounded us with. And my mother, teased hair, ripped shirts, acid wash jeans tucked into leather studded boots. Was I supposed to be fearful of them? The anger and hatred toward those who didn't conform to society's expectations also took the form of fear-mongering. The film industry took a cue, and this can be easily seen by how criminals were depicted in the 80s films. Street gangs, the guy who menacingly clicks open a switchblade, rioters, looters. They were always punks. Punks were portrayed as dirty, half-witted degenerates, thieves hell-bent on destruction, kind of like unhinged, lawless psychopaths. Those who could not be trusted.
Malcolm, is this detention? Actually, it's your mother's house. And we're all having a party.
When they needed something bigger, something scarier, a little more calculated, they went for large, long-haired, leather-clad, usually some combination between biker and metalhead. They turned them into the monsters they believed they were until their image became synonymous with dangerous. The irony was that anybody that looked like this in the real world, they were the ones being attacked. Yes. Many tried to defend who they were and shed these misconceptions, but nobody wanted to hear it. Their minds were made up and they wanted to believe what they wanted to believe. So in the end, for anybody who was alternative, it just basically ended up being a fruitless endeavor.
This scene gives you the opportunity to be an individual, and you get to say what you want to say and do what you want to do. And if anyone disagrees with you, they can come up to your face and tell you so. Instead of,
But Debbie, you know when they write about it, the writers always say this was born out of a frustration that you guys had somewhere along the way with your parents, with your family, with Superb.
I don't know. Experts keep writing all these stupid books and having these stupid talk shows. Like Phil Donahue had his ridiculous show on. I'm sorry, Phil, but you really blow. And all he did was put words in our mouths. He kept coming up and going, "You hate your parents, right? You hate your parents. You're all fascist Nazis, right? Right?" And we're like, "Where are you getting this from, Phil?"
Well, he's getting it from the same place we get it from what we read about.
Well, where do you read these things?
Well, New York Magazine for one. Okay, let's start with that. That was just out a couple months ago.
Peter Blounder should not be allowed to write for Bazooka Bubblegum Comics. This guy's a completely incompetent journalist.
Well, then tell me.
I don't know who she is, but I love her.
It is kind of an eccentric way of
You know what it is? These people get these ideas. All right, we're going to do this great story on this like bizarre cult, right? And they go down to bars and they eavesdrop in on conversations, and then they don't even print the whole truth. What they do is pick the most sensational, stories, sex, drugs, orgies, I mean, like, the whole article is supposed to be on the music scene, and he ends up writing about my sex life. Who cares about my sex life?
I do.
Oh, well, we do. Well, we don't want to be labeled, we don't want to be, there's all these scenes like the yuppies, the preppies, the japs, the heavy metal kids, we all ended up getting labeled because people in society, they have to classify you, they have to put you in a category because they have to explain you. If they can't explain you, then people start getting nervous. What are these kids up to? What's going on with them?
All right, now, do you go to NYU dressed like that?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Well, what about your parents? How do they feel about this? How does your family feel about it?
My mother loves it.
My mother's very supportive. She respects my opinions as an individual. She thinks I can think for myself, and she knows if I have to do this, then I have to do this.
Do you have a job?
I have 3 jobs.
What do you do?
I go to school full-time. I'm a part-time studio assistant for Spiderweb Studios. I'm a part-time assistant for an artist on 24th Street. I work in the school library at Pratt Institute. I'm a fine arts major full-time at Pratt.
Now, Christine,
I'm
I
putting
mean,
myself
are
through
you
school,
dressed
by
the way you dress when you go to these jobs, or are you dressed for us the way you dress at night?
Since I've been in New York, I dress the way that I want to. Before I moved down here, it was a lot harder. I tried to tone it down a little bit, but it really got me angry to have to do that because I'm a very competent person. I can work as well or better than anyone that dresses conservatively or straight, and that doesn't really have anything to do with
So you're not rebelling against anybody. You just chose this.
doing what I want to do.
Doing what you...
If you had to describe in a sentence what hardcore is, what would you tell me? Being honest.
You can't just dress up and put on a costume, what's his name? Phil Donnie kept saying it's a costume, it's not a costume. It's a way of life. It's the way we think, it's the way we act.
Identifying. These kids are basically, they're telling you they're not on drugs. Most of them are in school. A lot of them work. They like each other. So if they look a
Are they rebelling against anything?
Sure. What are you rebelling against?
Ugly clothing.
She's not wrong. They tried, but by that point, the public perception of nonconformity had such a stranglehold over people that it was really, there was no point. For me as a kid, it was kind of like those people that are allergic to cats, except their own cat. Because I would see punks and I would see rockers out and about, and sometimes they would make me feel very unsafe, and it scared me. Not because they were dangerous, but because that's what society taught me. It taught me that people who looked different, who looked in such a way that stood out like that, those are people that you needed to be afraid of, and they scared me. I feel awful about this one incident that happened, and I remember it so vividly because this man terrified me to my core, and I'm sure, made him feel awful because I remember his face, and I remember my aunt trying to console both him and me at the time. Let me explain. So, I was a little kid, no more than 5 years old. It was 1985. I was at the beach, and my aunt took me up to the water fountain because I was thirsty, and as a kid, I ran to the water fountain. I'm drinking from the water fountain, and I didn't even clock this man coming up to the water fountain as well. I became aware of his presence when I heard his huge, deep man voice say, "Hey, little girl, what are you doing? You having some water?" He was just trying to be friendly. I look up, and I see, to my mind, what only could be described as the ultimate warrior from wrestling stood right in front of me. This huge bodybuilder dude, huge, with long feathered hair, smiling down at me. And I screamed in his face. I screamed at the top of my lungs, right in his face, and I went into full-on panic hysterics. And my aunt had to grab me and console me. And I just remember him going, I'm so sorry. Because he didn't expect me to react that way. But he scared the crap out of me. I thought this man was going to kidnap me and chop me up. And you could see how awful he felt. And I wonder if he remembers that. To this day, I wonder if he remembers that. It's around 1988, I was about 8 years old. My parents decided they wanted to drive to Florida to visit my grandparents. Now, this is driving from New York to Florida through the southern states, which immediately worried the rest of my family, considering my father and mother and the way that they looked. Particularly, they were more concerned about my father having long hair and tattoos. Seeing as men with long hair were not viewed favorably, it was worse down south. Way worse down south. So we were going to be driving through the Carolinas, we were going to be driving through West Virginia, Georgia, and my family on both sides were very adamant about my father hiding his hair and wearing long sleeves, no matter how hot it is, to hide his tattoos. I remember the conversations they had leading up to the trip. They said, you don't understand, it's really important that you cover up those tattoos and you put your hair up into a hat, because if they see you with long hair, they do not like men with long hair and tattoos, it's dangerous. And I remember, a couple of times my grandfather using some choice words and saying that they'll shoot you. So it was scary. I was afraid driving to and from Florida, thinking that we were all going to get killed because of my dad and his long hair. Then came the 90s, and in the 90s it was a total shift in the media. Talk shows took an interest in those who dared to be different, and since by then more alternative subcultures were revealed, they had lots to choose from, and they were ripe for the picking. Perfect for shock TV, which was now becoming the new daytime norm, and they were competitive with one another. You had goths, punks, metalhead, hardcore kids, candy ravers, club kids. They went on these shows. And for those who were, say, less sincere and wore it as a costume rather than a lifestyle, they could be coached, and they were encouraged to be grotesque or over the top and performative. Stick out your tongue, give the devil horns, make an entrance. As a goth, friends with other goths at the time, it was really frustrating to watch. Other alternative kids who appeared and thought that they were going to be representing their subculture in a bid to be better understood, they were in for a rude awakening. They were booed, they were mocked.
What's funny is that when I switched groups, I actually switched where I sat. So I went from sitting in one part of the school. There's like 4 sections to sit in. There was the kind of like a loser section that unfortunately one of my friends sat at that I did eventually get him out of that section. There was the gangster section, which I actually hung out with a lot in that area. Not because I was gangster, just because I happened to like the guys and we like talking shit to each other. But then they, after stabbing at the school, they made us break up. So then I had to choose between either the popular section or the normal kids section. And I chose the normal kids section, but I didn't get along with them. So I ended up outside with the goths. And actually, I'm looking at these photos right now with my goth friends. I don't think I can show it because we're in high school and I don't want to, you know, get us in trouble. But yeah, I'm looking at Dami, I'm looking at Christina, I'm looking at Joseph, I'm looking at his girlfriend, I'm looking at Alex, I'm looking at Rebecca and everyone else. And it was just fun. Okay. Anyway, hold on. I'm just looking for a few. Can't show any of those. Wow, I'm so young. My face looks so different. Look at that. Look at that face. Okay. All right, so here, I want to show you a few pictures. There's some other ones that I'll look through, see if there's anything else worth showing. But I want to give you a little highlight of me in my goth/metalhead days. No one's really watching right now anyway, but that's okay. You guys will watch it tomorrow. Okay, so check that out. It's me at the cemetery. Look at that hair. Look at that hair. I miss that hair. And when it got wet, it would go all the way down to the middle of my back. I think this is an awesome photo. It's me kneeling at my sister's grave. Look at that. Can you see it? Look at that. Look at that little afro. You see the afro? That's natural, baby. It's all natural. And I want you to notice, I'm not even wearing all black here. But just because I have an ankh and I have a yin yang symbol, that would be enough to make people think I didn't fit in. Just from that. That's me, by the way. It's me. That's my cousin. You see that? Just because I had an ankh and a yin yang, that's enough to make people uncomfortable. Yeah. That's me. That's little old me. And then the blue hair. You see the blue hair? That's a nice little blue hair. The bangs. Got the little tongue piercing going on. Got the combat boots. Actually, I think these are Wolverines. I'm not really sure. Got my Jeep. Oh, I love that Jeep. And let me see. Now, this one is technically me in goth clothes, but because I'm in woodshop here, it looks like I'm a cholo. But technically, that was goth. Let's see. This would be a little bit younger, still wearing goth and winter clothes while everybody else is wearing summer clothes. Not the most fashionable. Here's one that's a little bit more prominent. This is me right before going out to a goth club. So there you go. You can see the black lipstick. I don't think the hair's dyed there. You can see the white. Terrible white. You have the sunglasses at night, black lipstick, the whole thing. And I'm going to cover that right there. But you can see what that looks like with me coming in and out. Look at that. I look all ghostly and scary. I can't show that. Can't show that. Anyway, so that's what I look like. And you know, blue hair, dressed in all black, with an ankh. Here, let me show that. Actually, I have it. It's funny. Yeah, I keep all my goth jewelry right behind a cowboy hat. It's kind of a interesting little tidbit for you. Let me see. So this is a little yen, Chinese yen. I used to wear sometimes. This is, hold on. This is a rune. It's a runic X. I loved this thing. I used to wear it everywhere. And then here's my ankh. I'll still wear it for religious reasons. I am not a Coptic Christian, but I do like the ankh, so I do wear it still sometimes when I go to church or something like that. It's a very cool cross. And then, now this is not the original. The original one actually, I think, shredded. So I put it on a different one. But here we go. This is my original ankh and my original yin yang. It's the little necklace I was wearing in that, or at least the pendants that I was wearing in that photo. Look at that. And this was a choker, by the way. I don't even think I can wear this now. Let me see. Hold on. See if I can still do this. I probably can't. You see how built I was in those photos? Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm choking. Okay. Oh, you know what? It's funny. It's kind of loose in that other photo. But, you know, I could still... Let me see. Hold on. Let's compare. Let's see. Where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at? Let's see. Where are we? Okay. So, see, it's a little looser. You see, it's just I don't have as much neck muscle. Where am I? I don't have as much neck muscle as I do now. It still kind of works. I mean, I think I could get away with it. I need more hair, though, to get away with it. Look at the little curl. Isn't that cool? All right, anyway. I keep this more for memory than to wear. Although I am going to buy a new version of it. I have it on my wish list, on my Amazon wish list. Oh. Wow, that white has faded. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going.
They were insulted and they were laughed at by an entire audience, and they were goaded into a reaction. And believe me, the producers and audience ate it up.
She's 14. Her name is Sarah, and find out what's going on here. Sarah, come on out. Sarah, what's the problem?
There's no problem. They were booing me.
Okay, but what is the problem?
They were lured into an ambush. They viewed us as freaks, and they had no intentions of humanizing us. The goal was to portray us in a light that held true to what they wanted society to perceive us as. Uncivilized, degenerates, circus freaks with no goal in life other than pissing off our parents. Everyone on that stage up for public scrutiny, they're all teenagers brought there by their parents. Now, this next girl you're about to see, she's only 15 years old. Let me know if you think this is in any way okay for an adult to speak to a 15-year-old.
Your hand up, yeah.
Your t-shirt should read white trash.
I was asking her, what is she on? What are all of them on to look like that, most of them?
I'm completely straight edge. I do not do drugs. I do not drink, and I do not smoke cigarettes. And I bet every single one of y'all have at least done it once in your life.
You working?
Yes. Where do you work? I work in a daycare. Okay, I realize that there's an appropriate time for this stuff, and it is not. This isn't appropriate at the daycare.
You don't look like
dress
that at
this.
daycare.
I can put my hair down, and I can look completely normal, just like anyone in the.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can just put the hair down, and it'll look like it's just regular hair, so.
This audience.
You have a daycare center?
I have a daycare center, and I don't think I'd even let her wear the jacket in the door.
Oh, these three over here, they don't look that bad, but the four over here, you look like a bunch of freaks, man.
Just because the media decided to take an interest in alternative subcultures to use us as entertainment for daytime TV did not in any way make us safe. I think in some ways it probably made us a little bit more of a target, but I didn't start really getting into alternative music until around the summer of '94, and that's when I really started making friends in the subculture.
I didn't start getting into alternative music until 96. I want to say 96. 96, maybe 97. I think it was 96. Could have been 97. A lot of Susie and the Banshees, a lot of Searchlight Symphony, a lot of Danzig. Witchblade and Darkness was a big deal.
Culture as well. I moved to a new place, I was going to a new school,
Spawn.
so I was just all around new to the school in general and the whole area. And by the time I started my school year, I had friends exclusively in the alternative scene. And even though I listened to the music, I didn't really start expressing that on the outside until a good few months into the school year. So for a while, I would say a good few months, I had one foot in Normie land and the other foot in freakware. I'm using quotes because that's what they called us. So in 1994, there was an incident at my school that was referred to as Beat the Freak Week. And it started small.
Yeah. It was interesting for me because I was strong, so no one was messing with me with that. Junior high people messed with me, yeah. Skinny, small, effeminate. By the time I was in high school, I had the big old gun, I had big old arms. I say big old, but you know what I mean. I had big old arms, big old biceps, and no one was messing with me anymore.
It started
So
with
I actually would protect a few of the smaller guys. By smaller, they were tall. They were just bean poles. Protect them from the guys who didn't like them.
the jocks making a hit list of certain people in the alternative scene that they wanted to attack. My friends
Very
were
true.
on that list, but it turned into something huge. It turned into something where it was just basically the entire school, just chaos.
I want to say that was 97 for us. 97, 98. And then, of course, 99. 99 was a bad year for everybody.
And this school was not a small school. This made headlines, which I've yet to be able to find today. I've been still looking some 20 years later. My high school was one of the biggest in the nation. It had the biggest graduating class in the nation. I don't know where that stands now, but certainly at the time, it was the biggest. So we had to be separated between two campuses. They put 9th and 10th on the south campus and then 11th and 12th on the north. So this happened in the south campus. So for a solid week, there were just teachers scrambling, not knowing what the hell to do. Because given the sheer size of our school and the overall population of it, there was just a huge disparity as to faculty versus kids. They couldn't contain us and they didn't know what to do, and it was so poorly handled. There was police there every day, ambulances, kids airlifted to hospitals. At one point, we were locked into an auditorium with the teachers so that the students couldn't get us. Kids were getting pulled out of school. It was a mess.
They literally sent all the goth kids home. Again, except for me. No one was going to mess with me. It's such a weird turnover from junior high where everybody would mess with me. And then suddenly in high school, it's like, he's fine. No one. Did you see how big my fucking chest was? Holy smokes. No wonder nobody messed with me. Just look at that. Look at those chesticles. Same shirt, very different. Like, I think that's almost a year apart from each other. Just look at that. It's amazing what muscles does for a guy.
Yes. And this was all because of what we looked like, because we were, by their terms, freaks. Like I said, and this is why it was really important that I pointed out what I looked like. Since I was new at the school, I didn't have a history with these people, and I didn't look freaky by their definition. I was never on that list. For me, I was very fortunate, whereas a lot of students at the time, they were not. And a lot of the parents.
Seriously, I went from being picked on for having no muscle and being girly and only having female friends to not being messed with because I could literally toss the guys who were going to mess with me. Like, I was just like, whatever. You weigh 150 pounds? I bench press 200. What are you going to do? Oh, you're 135, 40 pounds? Okay.
Like the parents of a lot of my friends that were targeted, you think that they would be empathetic and want
200 pounds of raw sex appeal
to be able to help and protect their kid, but instead they gave them crap for it. They grounded them, they yelled at them and said, see, this is because you choose to look like that. Just back in the 90s, the bar of what was considered freaky was extremely low. And you could just simply be wearing an entirely black outfit. That's it. You don't even necessarily have to have an unnatural hair color, crazy makeup. Just wear all black and maybe some Doc Martens and watch how people stare at you, hurl abuse, throw things at you.
Yeah, look at that. That's me.
Is 1995, I got my first part-time job, and it was at Burger King. The manager interviewing me kept looking down at my nails, and it started making me a little bit uncomfortable because I knew exactly what he was looking at. It was my nail polish. And I'm answering.
I used to have, I think I still have some somewhere. I had black nail polish. I had black mascara, black lipstick. I think I tried red and pink once, but I like the pink. I like the pink. Never went purple, although I think purple would have worked on me. I had blue hair, green hair. I think I had yellow hair at one point. Kind of like a bright orange. And it's all this hair that's gone. I probably fried it. Who knows? All this is right here, and it just. And I had a little tongue piercing going on. Yeah, those are good days. But yeah, Bodo fides, legit.
Questions and talking, and there's like a manager and assistant manager, and he finally speaks as over whoever, I think it was the assistant manager that was interviewing me. He was the manager, and he says, and if you do start, that crap has got to come off. And he just points to my hands. I'm wearing blue nail polish at the time. Blue. Like the sky, like the ocean. And this is a perfect testament to what people considered appalling and freaky and grotesque and over the top. Blue nail polish. So it didn't take...
Yeah. Blue highlights, blue hair, and a piercing was enough to scare people. I don't know. I look at these photos now, and I don't even look that goth in them. You know, I remember at the time it was like it looked super goth with the ankh and the yin yang and the blue hair and the piercing and the black boots, the combat boots. I still have the combat boots somewhere. Now, that doesn't even look. What's the question here? Hold on. Someone had a question. How do I stop slime from oozing out of my skin?
Much around that time to get branded a degenerate, a freak, a loser, that kind of thing. So the blue nail polish had to come off because, in his words, you need to put on something more presentable and girly, like pink or red. Right, like the inside of the human body versus the sky or the ocean. Flawless logic, sir. So I want to fast forward to, I want to say either 95 or 96, whenever The Craft was released. So around that time, I happened to look very much like the character Nancy. I had to have the same sense of dress because I guess that's what a goth looked like during that period. Short black hair, makeup very similar, tons of rosary beads, and we did dress very similar. I hadn't seen that yet. The actress that plays Firuza Balk, who plays Nancy in the movie, we look nothing alike. We have different shaped heads, different color eyes, different skin tone. There's physically everything different about us. However, everybody at my school thought that I was a spitting image of her, and they were utterly terrified of me. Terrified. And it's simply because short black hair, same style of dress, and that was all it took. People thought that I was a witch. People thought that I was going to kill them. There were a few incidents that went down in my high school, one of which I detailed, but I remember the day after The Craft was released. I told a story about this on my channel, and I remember I was walking up to meet friends in my town, and I think we were around Pizzeria, but I was going to meet them. And I remember I was on a main road. This was Hawkins Avenue, headed toward Portion Road. And I was just passing a gas station, and it was broad daylight, so it's not like I was exactly concerned when this happened. And as I'm walking...
You know, I think my wife put them away, but I used to have my old CD case. It was like a big old fat CD case from the late 90s, early 2000s, and it had all my rock and all my metal and all my goth music in there. And I used to actually spend time, every time I would get a new computer, transferring the music from one computer to another computer, because like I had to have it with me at all times.
And a van goes by, and I see a group of guys in there gawking at me, but not in a perverted sense, but with total shock. And they immediately, they pull over, and they get out, and they're like, it's you! It's you! I've never seen these guys in my life. I have no idea who they are. And they were like, yo, we saw that movie The Craft last night, and the whole time we're like, yo, that's like that girl from school. No idea who these guys are. I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't see the movie yet, so, but not long after that, there were some incidents where, there was one where a cheerleader had, and the irony is, her brother was in a band called Terminal Sect, which I happened to really like at the time. But she had a nightmare about me chasing her around a river with some needle thing, and I remember her having basically a meltdown in school, and seeing her and her friends shielding her face from me as I passed by. And that is around the time that things really changed. It was around the time that The Craft came out that I think really did mark the end of Satanic Panic for a lot of places, because suddenly not only were we kind of feared in a way, and I mean, Satanic Panic was always built by way of fear-mongering anyway, but this was a little bit different because we were feared in a way.
So when I was being picked on, check it out. So look at the change. Like the change is amazing. So look, that's me when I was being picked on. Look at that. Look at that little sad little. Look at that, just all sad. That's 88. And then, let's see, do I have puberty me? I think I have puberty me in one of these photos. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. Well, I guess you're going to see my dad. Okay. So, and this is me at puberty. That's my dad. Look at that. So the photos you saw were 88, and this is like 92. 92, 93. Look at that. And then from that, so I still don't have the muscles yet. I'm like real close. Like that's 1 year away from the muscles. To $1996 to that. Ain't that insane? Ain't that insane? How does that happen?
That made us somewhat cool, to where people either wanted to hang out with us or look like us, and that's just weird. So when people discount others in alternative subcultures, or they look at them and say, oh, it's just a look, it's just a costume, it's something that I find very
My
frustrating.
college apartment.
If it were just a costume, to anybody who does wear it as simply a costume,
That was my college
the
apartment.
moment they faced any sort of opposition, any kind of negative impact due to the way that they looked, out comes the soap, the clothes come off without a second thought, and they never look back. And that's the difference. If someone's going to be as honest about themselves as to wear their personality on the outside, so literally wear it on their sleeve by way of kind of dressing eccentric, by way of, you know, their subculture. That to me is one of the purest forms of honesty, because if they're going to look like that and show you that side of themselves, what else is there to hide?
You run yourself down. Why do you do that?
I'm not running myself down. You think I'm running my... I don't think I'm running myself down. Why? Because of the way I dress? Because I can laugh at myself? That's called a sense of humor. You should get one. They're nice.
The fact.
Cringe goth. Cringe goth. They'll like me if I look scary. That didn't happen.
Seventh generation satanic worshiper.
Oh my God, dude, I love it. So I think this is from, what, 1994, maybe even earlier. This is a remnant of something called the Satanic Panic. Now, if you weren't around for the 1980s and the 1990s, there's a thing called the Satanic Panic. It was like a moral outrage, basically, where tons and tons and tons of people, mostly evangelical nutter butters, went nuts over this idea that there were Satanists around every corner. They thought that they were doing satanic rituals on children in daycares and kindergartens and all kinds of crazy stuff. There's even a dude, a therapist, who had a patient named Michelle, and he helped her extract, quote-unquote, hidden memories from her childhood. It turns out they were false memories. This is a real phenomenon that happens. People can formulate false memories and believe with complete certainty that they really did happen. They're completely fabricated. This is why therapists should absolutely never, ever help somebody recover repressed memories under any circumstances, because there's a 50-50 shot they're completely fake. My mom dealt with false memories herself. Well, anyways, the Satanic Panic era started when this therapist extracted these false memories from this woman named Michelle of her basically being subjected to satanic ritual abuse, is what they called it. Satanic ritual abuse. Completely fake. This term doesn't even exist in real life. It's all fabricated. He ended up going on to write a book about it and marrying his patient. Not a fantastic look. So anyways, Michelle Remembers is the name of the book, and it was the start of the Satanic Panic. I forget exactly how many. I think like 17,000 or something reports over the course of 10 years of, you know, satanic rituals and satanic practices taking place at like daycares and kindergartens and stuff like that. Literally not one was verified to be true. Obviously. There's no satanic ritual whatever taking place. It's all fabricated. But it's fascinating to look back on it in history, see what was happening at the time. And it's useful to us now because the Satanic Panic is making a comeback. I want to talk about what it looked like back then and what it looks like now. We're going to be talking about, in a little while, some clips from Alex Jones and some other religious nutter.
Man, what's healthy about selling a knife that fits?
Vicky.
Oh my god, dude, it's so bad. It's so cringy. Holy shit. Oh, it's painful. It's or I'd be the guy growling. Most likely I'd be the growler. God. Oh, that's bad, dude. That's really, really bad. Hilarious.
In the book of Revelation about the flying beast with the riders on it.
This could actually be taken from Revelation.
Sure, it looks like it.
Or the people writing it took inspiration from Revelation. You know? It's not as if that book is secret.
Dude, this is so sad. Seriously, these people, anything about that. This is just made up. It's like they created their own theology around all of this nonsense that exists entirely outside of the Bible.
Not only that, but I also found out that was the same name as a cat on the Smurfs. And
oh my god, the Smurfs, evil confirmed. You know, the sad part is Jehovah's Witnesses would probably agree with this. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. There's this urban legend in Jehovah's Witnesses where somebody, you know, the story changes from person to person, but anybody over the age of, say, 30 years old who was a Jehovah's Witness heard this when they were little. The idea is somebody showed up with a Smurf book. This is the version I heard. Showed up to the king, and one of the Smurfs jumped off of the ping, walking as they had a billion theories. Smurfs on Witnesses today. They're, you know, just absolutely nuts, dude. Absolutely nuts. Look, this is a continuation of their, you know, satanic toy line or whatever.
Just to be very clear, He-Man took a lot of inspiration from heavy metal, and heavy metal took a lot of inspiration from He-Man's, and that all comes stuff from like the sword and wizardry and sword and sorcery books of the 70s and early 80s. So, yeah.
well, it's got an interesting little feature here. I'm going to turn it on. It can actually transform your voice from your regular voice to that of an occultic hero. Is that
an occultic hero, huh?
He-Man.
Is that what it's advertised as? It'll turn your voice into a satanic hero or something?
I mean, Skeletor is kind of satanic. I mean, you know. So is Starscream.
correct? So let's get it.
So is Megatron, but in a very different way. You know?
Type of voice.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna. Skeletor. The universe is super where this can be found. Charging you anything today? My YouTube. The Satanic Panic was not one isolated event. It was a series of events over decades. Check this one out. This is 1994. It's from a TV show called Pagan Invasion. It was a 12-part series on VHS. You know what? I'm not going to give any more.
And set up whispering campaigns against the pastor and the elders.
Who are they, I hear you asking?
Seduce the pastor. For 2 years,
They try to seduce the pastor, obviously excusing any...
church. I was constantly complaining about the pastor's sermons being too long.
Glenn, former...
Gossiping about others.
Just complete garbage, dude. Neither for a fact, because I looked into them. This guy at the beginning actually wrote a book. This guy right here, he wrote a book. And I actually purchased the book. I wanted to read it on stream, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. Anyway, they're both completely lying. But here's the thing. The Satanic Panic is back, unfortunately. The list named Robin Bullock.
I'm not interested in this part over here, so let's go to the next video. We might do 30 more minutes. I don't know. I know the opening was a bummer. I'm sorry, guys. Anyone who made it to that opening, thank you so much. Like I said, I didn't know that 60-minute special was going to be that dark. I thought I was going to have some fun stuff to poke at. What happens when you're reacting live?
Live streams, Dr. Sledge. And I think maybe comments do this as well. When you're a member of the website.
I don't know. Have you guys heard of this channel, Mythvision? I think it's an up-and-coming atheist channel. I don't think it's going to do very well. It'll probably disappear in a few months.
And follow up, he even has special ancient books, occultic books and stuff you can get for purchase when he's selling them, if he's not trying to harvest them all himself, because he's into that. We were just talking about before this live how weird we are, and we're into these weird niche topics, but you know, it's fun stuff. So he has a YouTube channel that actually just broke 199.
You know, what's interesting is that my next video on this planned, we're not going to get to it, obviously, was esoterica. I might save that for tomorrow. I know I want to do some, like, hear the actual preachers talking, but we might do some esoterica tomorrow because I like his channel. It's good stuff, and him talking about the Satanic Panic sounds fun.
9K, really 200K. So you're at the 200. Look, I just refreshed it. It was like 20 minutes ago that you must have just broke it. His YouTube channel is growing rapidly. He just had a viral video right now going on with Mary Magdalene and secret teachings. He goes into the occult. You name it. There's all sorts of fun stuff. Would you like to tell us anything about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so what I work on is what is called the academic study of Western esotericism. So things like alchemy, Kabbalah, magic, the occult. But again, approached from an academic point of view. So the channel's not, I don't know, cluttered over with conspiracy theories and crazy stuff. So it's weird stuff to be sure, but again, always from an academic.
I don't know why we call it that.
Hey, no, it's no, we have to keep the lights on, and this is great scholarship, Derek. You do a really great job. You and Neil both do a fantastic job of really getting the getting scholarship.
Right.
The Satanists or elites are involved in sexually assaulting children or harvesting the adrenochrome from their bodies or something like this. So it's a rehash of these kinds of ideas that actually reach back to the Middle Ages.
It's really mind-boggling because when I don't.
So.
You were actively involved. A lot more to that than what meets the eye. So it takes a lot of skill and effort. Also finding Moses with Bart Ehrman.
No, we have to keep the lights on, and this is great scholarship, Derek. You do a really great job. You and Neil both do a fantastic job. Spaces like YouTube, where popular education is, people really want to get knowledge. What is
not just from seeing other content, like reflects the reality that conspiracies and all sorts of wild stuff, like what we're going to talk about
Okay,
today.
so we're probably going to end on this video. I don't know how far we're going to get through it, and I don't want to promise that I'm going to get back to it. We might never come back to this video. Maybe we will. Who knows? All right, let's get to it.
Runs rampant. And today we're going to talk about the Satanic Panic. But see, there's something unique about you, for those who haven't seen your YouTube channel on this topic. It's not just that you know about the Satanic Panic. It's not that you just know about the occults and you know about the secret teachings and Gnosticism and you name it, okay? All of the different secret society kind of ideas. It's you were actively involved in some of this controversy that has happened when the Satanic Panic was spreading like a wildfire on the news.
Yeah,
so
I was very much a victim of the Satanic Panic. And that,
I want to hear about this. In fact, I was hoping that we could get into this. I know it's very sensitive material, but it's important people understand. What is the Satanic Panic?
So the Satanic Panic is a name given to a general moral panic that began in the early 80s, 1980s, primarily in the United States. And the general idea was that there was a vast international network of Satanists that were using daycares, heavy metal music, Dungeons and Dragons, and
by the way, don't think that it ended. This stuff is still around today. There's still, I mean, I know that it's bullshit, and I still am hesitant to watch certain shows or imbibe in certain media because of the Satanic Panic. Like, I'm not even a Protestant. I'm a Catholic. Like, this stuff shouldn't even be on my radar, but it is. It's in the back of my mind. So, this stuff was very, very real. Very real.
and other kinds of things to basically recruit people into this vast network of Satanists. And this would include things like doing satanic rituals, sacrificing babies, assaulting children, a whole wide range of things that were going on, allegedly. And as this went on, this became a very popular topic on daytime television. This became the subject of books and documentaries.
You know, I actually made it a point because of how repressive and stupid the Satanic Panic was, that to read almost everything that they would, anything that they would put labeled as not safe, like, oh, this is evil, I would go read it and just check it out and be like, oh, this is stupid. Most of the stuff that they thought was evil was just stupid. It wasn't that it was, not that it didn't have like witches and demons, and it all had witches and demons. Like, who gives a shit? But it was all crap. It was all badly written. If you read something like The Witcher, which is really well written, that's not the stuff they were fighting against. They were fighting against the schlock, which, don't get me wrong, schlock is good. Like, look, I love schlock now. Like, I have the Vampire the Masquerade novelizations. Like, this is schlock, man. This is pure schlock. But they're fun. As a teenager, I wouldn't have appreciated though. Yes? Hi. Hello. I picked up a book and you want to pee on it again? Is that what you're saying? Come here. Give me my lap. We're almost done. We're almost done. I'll play with you after we're done. Come on. Come on. Okay. Come on up. Come on. Come on. Hi. There you go. Do you want to say hi? Let me see if I can get the camera to move. There she is. Hi. Yeah. Hi. You see her tail? Her tail's starting to wag. You see? You see? Look, look, look. It's going up. I don't know why she likes that. I really don't know why. Let's get back to the show.
And eventually what came out as scientists and scholars began to study it was that there was no evidence for any of this, that people began to basically spin yarn. And in all of these cases, in these many different daycare facilities or in the heavy metal music or in Dungeons and Dragons, they never found any evidence that there was widespread satanic ritual abuse happening, et cetera, et cetera. So basically it's a moral panic in the same way that there have been moral panics around all kinds of things through history. But it is a specific moral panic on the idea that there is this network of Satanists throughout the world that are causing people to join the satanic organization and do all kinds of bad things. So that's the general overview of what it was. We can get more into the granular aspects of how it actually developed and how it also leans on historical ideas that come from the Middle Ages. And so in many ways, a lot of the ideas that really were built up into the Satanic Panic are actually coming out of the medieval witch hunts and things like that. So there's survivals of those things.
Uh-oh.
What is it you're holding?
Panic in some ways never totally ended. The modern version of course, is the QAnon conspiracy theory that also holds the idea that an international conspiracy of
You didn't like that one. I'm sorry.
Satanists or elites are involved in sexually assaulting children or harvesting the adrenochrome from their bodies or something like this. So it's a rehash of these kinds of ideas that actually reach back to the Middle Ages.
It's really mind-boggling because when I don't know the origins or how this developed, I'm curious to learn about that from you today, if possible, and also what involvement you had with being a victim of this situation. I think of it as propaganda, right? Because I don't know the inner details that actually are involved. Like someone might look at the Apostle Paul, to give you an analogy, and say, oh, this guy's in it for power, this guy's in it for money, he doesn't even believe what he's doing. I think that's false. I think this guy actually believes what he's doing, what he's saying. Whether it's right or wrong or true is irrelevant. And one could still say it's somewhat propaganda. But in light of the Satanic Panic, I'm reminded of those commercials they used to have where they were anti-marijuana, and they talked about how the neighbor smoking pot or rape, and go and rob and run into your house and do all this stuff. And it's like, no, like this is propaganda.
Reefer Madness was the sort of Reefer Madness was an example of another moral panic. Temperance movement was a moral panic. The anti
I was going to say the Bonfire of the Vanities, the witch hunts, the Inquisition, more panics against Jews, more panics against Catholics, more panics against everything. Yeah.
The absinthe movement was a moral panic. So there have been lots of moral panics through history. Christianity was the subject of a moral panic. The Romans
Absinthe,
were horrified
yeah.
of Christianity early on. They blamed all kinds of things on how bad Christianity was. So, which is ironic. But yeah, what we have is, again, the Satanic Panic.
It wasn't against Christianity. It was against Catholicism. Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
The moral panic. That
when you say Christianity, what you mean in that period of time was Catholicism.
Mostly existed from the 1980s and didn't really come to a complete conclusion probably until the early 2000s. So it's a 20-year-long panic.
Take us into what started it, if you don't mind.
So the earliest examples we have of the panic begin with a book called Michelle Remembers. So this was a...
So when I do my video, I'm going to film it tomorrow, but I'll probably post it on Saturday or Sunday. Who knows? I'm going to say it started earlier than that. That's going to be my reference points are going to be a little bit earlier.
Bombshell best-selling book that was published in I think 1980.
Because most people will focus only on the D&D and the D&D aspects and the what has to do with Oh, why's my brain blanking? The daycare center stuff in California, but they forget about like the stuff that I showed about the Teresa stuff on from Australia, or the event that happened in the EU or the UK or whatever it was at the time, Great Britain, I don't know, and then they also forget about the Hollywood, how Hollywood was dragged into this, and how the music industry was dragged into this. So I'm gonna be pulling back from example set a little bit earlier than this one particular incident.
And in this book, a woman alleges to have recovered memories from her childhood in the 1950s in the Pacific Northwest, and in your neck of the woods, where she, through the process of memory recollection, which is a very spurious form of psychotherapy, she recovered memories of being abused by a satanic cult led by her father. And she has all kinds of very horrifying things that she lays out in this book. And there's all kinds of weird shenanigans that go on in this book. Like her therapist became her husband at some point. Like they ended up becoming like romantically involved with each other, which is a clear ethical violation. That's not supposed to happen. She converts to Catholicism, which is the therapist's religion, during the course of the therapy, which is also a violation of patient stuff. And over time, what ends up happening is that this book, Michelle Remembers, is published. It becomes a bestseller. She goes on the circuit of daytime television shows like, I don't know, like the Geraldo show and things like that. This is featured in People magazine. It really gets a lot of coverage. And over time, what ends up happening is that people begin to fact check a lot of the very, frankly, crazy things that are said in this book. And some of them are so outrageous.
And that's what I was hoping when I picked that the 60-minute special from Australia. I was hoping that it was an updated version that actually had the actual facts as they stand today. Not that facts still aren't fluid and can't change, but that's what I wanted to show. And unfortunately, I picked a video that was just a little too raw and too depressing. So again, bad choice of a video. What happens when you watch live without checking?
It just doesn't make any sense. Like she had horns sewn onto her body and then ripped off. Like there would be scars of that. You can't do that to someone without there being physical evidence of it. But also, a lot of the facts didn't line up. So, for instance, she says that she was part of a 54-day ordeal of satanic rituals, but there's no evidence of her being out of school for any length of time. And be evidence if you're gone for 54 days. Mm-hmm. Her sisters don't remember any of this stuff, which is conspicuous, right? There's all kinds of things that go on that discorroborate this book, but none of that mattered because by the time the book was out, other people, other psychotherapists were also beginning to experiment with this regressive memory stuff. And there was a feedback loop that began where all kinds of people began to remember all kinds of, and I said, all kinds of satanic ritual abuse. And evidence was never produced for it. If you're harvesting tens of thousands of babies to produce for human sacrifices, some of that would show up.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about the bodies.
So if there are hundreds of thousands of Satanists all through the country gathering in the woods somewhere, someone's going to see something like that. And it never happened. And so the panic really began.
And I'm going back a long time, but from the psychology books that I've read and the classes that I took, it was the suggestions. So the investigators would read these other investigations and it would build up in their mind. So they would mean that when they were asking the questions and the kids wouldn't answer properly or wouldn't answer the way they want them to, they would lead them down a path that would go to the answers, go to the same situations that are covered in these other cases. So they're reading each other's material and they're building up the case in their imaginations and they're projecting that onto the minds of the child through suggestion. It's amazing. It's amazing how malleable the mind is and how that can be done. Yeah.
And there in the early 1980s, and it spreads from the Pacific Northwest out through the rest of the country, and eventually kind of goes all over the rest of the world. And there are big localized versions of it, like McMartin child care scandal, where basically an entire child care facility was arrested and charged with engaging in child molestation under the guise of Satanism, and they were eventually acquitted. And a lot of the things that were said about this were leading questions asked to a bunch of children, and many of the things the children said were completely outrageous. They're little kids, and this happened over and over and over again. It ruined a great many people's lives.
I'm reminded of a video I did a while back with a psychologist about Savannah syndrome, I think it was, or something. I can't.
We're only going to go for the 2-hour mark, so we got a little bit over 15 minutes to go. 1-5.
I'm having a hard time remembering. Havana, maybe. Anyway, in it, he's describing a panic that happened back when we were testing nuclear bombs out in the Pacific pretty much just testing our nuclear weaponry out. And people were starting to take notice, or they heard about these testings and they didn't know what the results would be. So people started to observe their windshields and notice little fractal, cracked looking or objects within the glass. And they started to think, this is particles coming down from the sky that are affecting our windshields and probably affecting us, our breathing, our everything. And they started panicking and started sharing it out. It went on the news. People started saying like, hey, the nuclear weapons are causing issues and our windshields are starting to show these visible things. But when scientists looked at the actual factories that made these windshields, they realized like in the process of making the windshields, this is what the production is, right? So this false alarm started spreading and everybody started calling 911. Hey, my windshield has it too. Like everybody starts thinking this bad thing. And I don't know what that is or what that technical term is in how we would label that when humans in
Derek, your example is good, but shut the fuck up. Let this guy talk.
general run with this kind
of... Actually, rumor feedback loops are where once a rumor begins to get going, it's actually really hard to stop it, because once people are afraid of something, whether it's radiation or the devil, when someone comes out and says, hey, I think we need to think critically about this and gather more evidence, that's a really unpopular position to take.
Right.
And so when law enforcement and other kinds of things would do that.
Again, I'm going to take it back to something smaller. Now I'm doing what Derek did. On both sides of the Olympic farce, I'm calling it a farce. I'm going to keep it a farce. Everyone's mad at me because I'm not agreeing with either side. I'm telling both sides, be rational. Yes, it is art, so therefore it's in France where religion is big, like Catholicism is big there. They know they're referencing. He's a professional artist. He knows he's referencing the Last Supper, and he knows he's making inferences to it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it's his direct inference. He could be referencing the Feast of the Gods and trying to recreate it faithfully, or whatever he thinks he's doing with it. And that inspiration could be compiling, and then other people in the thing could be like, well, hey, I know he's referencing that, but I'm thinking of this reference over here. And then it's art, so you bring what reference you have with you. So if you don't know the reference he's making, but you know the Christian reference, so that's what you're going to bring to it. And then the painting that they're referencing can be referencing the Last Supper, and then the Last Supper doesn't even relate to what the actual historical Last Supper would be in. And has all these other influences that it would have had. So there's all these layers of meaning and connections. And it becomes this thing where neither side wants to compromise. Either it's completely blasphemy or it's completely has nothing to do with Christianity. And it's like, or it's both. And it doesn't really matter because it doesn't affect God in either way. So let them have their protest farce thing, and who cares? And if you're a Christian and you're at the Olympics and you don't support that, then drop out of the Olympics. Don't compete. If you don't want to watch the Olympics, don't watch it. I'm not watching the Olympics, but it's not a religious thing. I don't care. This does not bother me when Galactica had the Last Supper and they had 6 as Jesus. It didn't bother me then. It's not going to bother me that some French protest artist I don't get it.
They were very.
Hold on, I'm going to show that one.
During the Satanic Panic in the 1980s, mobs would form, and they would just say, if the police aren't going to deal with these Satanists, we're going to deal with them. And they would just threaten to rampage through towns and gather up anyone who was listening to heavy metal music, or the nerds, or the guy playing Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever. Or if you just didn't go to church, or if you're whatever, you could really be in a situation where a crowd could legitimately threaten to do violence in your town. And this happened repeatedly during the panic. So yeah, the law enforcement often gave in to these rumor feedback loops, and they would bring in occult experts. Most of these people had no actual academic degrees. They were basically preachers who had studied sometimes even medieval witch hunting manuals, and basically became overnight experts in the occult. And these people would be on national television telling everyone that there are hundreds of thousands of Satanists all through the United States doing X, Y, and Z. And why wouldn't people believe that if it's on television? And being repeated
that isn't
over
even
and over?
a good
I will
version
say
of
that,
it.
one of the main people that spread this conspiracy theory was Geraldo Rivera, and he actually ruined many people's lives with this kind of stuff. And ultimately, he did apologize for it in 1995. He came out in public and said, "Yeah, I was wrong about all that. I really stoked the fires of something that ruined people's lives." He subsequently apologized. Of course, that didn't undo the damage.
Look at that. Just look at that. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Okay, everybody in the world, be offended that one of the greatest shows of all time. Be offended. Just there you go. One of the greatest shows of all time is using the imagery. Jesus is now 6. The betrayer is... Well, here it has... See, I don't... Because the betrayer is the one with the kiss. So it's either going to be Baltar's the betrayer or it's going to be Starbuck is going to be the betrayer. And then you have the accuser over here doing that number. You know what I mean? Like it's like... And the John the Baptist head thing from the Olympic one, I think was a little bit much. I do think that was a little bit much. I do think that's a little too on the nose. Even for art, I do think that was too on the nose. That's just me. I'm going to show a few other ones because there's a guy who's arguing with me for proof. I'm going to show the one from True Blood. I'm going to take this back, take it out. Here we go. Let's continue on.
Damage that he had done.
Right.
But yeah, it is interesting how these rumor feedback loops can go, and the Satanic Panic being an example of one of them.
I'm a little blown away by all of this. So I'm going to ask, we're going to get into your personal situation if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do, I found it. Someone reminded me in the chat and they said it's Hysteria. And I'm like, oh, that's right. So I found the video that I did and with the person I did this with. It was a very interesting episode where we dove into this. Let me share it like this. Just to play the intro, because this is the kind of stuff that you would imagine.
This is a site that has spooked many people in different parts of the East County. Near El Cajon, some neighbors are calling him Chupacabra after the legendary creature.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago.
There we go. So this is not the one I was looking for. I was looking for the one with the Maenad. That was the one that was really controversial when they actually used the Feast of the Gods imagery for their promo shoot. But check it out. Here you go. So there's Jesus. And there's True Blood doing the same thing, only without the table this time. But they actually have a more direct one that's more related, where they actually use the Maenad, and it's actually really cool. Let me see if I can find that one right now while we're doing this. Is it this one? I don't think it's this photo. I don't think it's this photo, because I don't see the Maenad there. You see, I don't think it's this one. I think that's the final shot, but it's the one where they're having the Bacchanal festival, and then they start killing the guys. Here, play.
The Government Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars.
In seconds. Oh. Is it a shape-shifting object? Is it Bezos? Is it Branson? What is it? Is it a UFO?
G'day everyone, artist Wayne Dowson here, and it's time to weigh in on the Bigfoot phenomenon.
These men are consummate snowball artists. They use sense and nerve gases to induce hallucinations. People think they're seeing ghosts.
Anyway, I put that little thing together. I was a little proud of that intro because it's like, the hysteria that develops from this, trying to put the whatever back into the can is nearly impossible. So I want to get your personal situation while
so here's the Maenad right there.
You have a personal experience with it, not only in learning and educating yourself about it. How were you involved, and in what way were you a victim of this whole thing?
Yeah, so I've mentioned this on my episode in the Satanic Panic, where
share that for you.
Yeah, in 1997, a young man came to my school, and after murdering his mother, actually began killing people at my school. It was one of the earliest school shootings. Ooh. And in the course of the subsequent investigation, several people were arrested, including me. And in the course of this, and what emerged was this idea that the school shooting was a result of a giant a satanic conspiracy involving several young men. And over the course of a year and a half, during the investigation, there were very serious charges levied against me and several other people. And what ultimately came out of it was that no evidence was ever found for this satanic cult that they alleged had plotted this murders. And so this was a huge thing in my life, where I was accused of really serious crimes, and in the course of the actual investigation, no evidence was ever produced, and the charges were dropped. And like in many cases, of the satanic panics, you have a situation where when people are accused of engaging in satanic murders or whatever, the media is all about covering that and all about making it a big deal, and they cover it to no end. But when the charges are dropped and the dust settles and there was never evidence of an actual satanic cult, the media never really covered that. And so what you get is a situation where even to this day, if you look at the coverage on the internet of what happened in 1997, there's a ton of evidence of the arrest. There's a ton of evidence of all kinds of dreadful things that they alleged happened. But when the case dissolved and all the charges were dropped and that was the end of it, there's basically no media coverage. And so this also happened in many, many other cases of the satanic panic, and this had the effect of ruining people's lives. I won't say that it ruined my life. I will say that it had a pretty negative impact on my life, but it also led me down the path of researching things like the occult academically, and also down the path of looking at moral panics like the satanic panic, and looking at things like the medieval witch hunts, and really getting at why these conspiracy theories are so dangerous. And the reason why they are so dangerous is they're baseless speculation that can ruin people's lives. So this is what I would say to people, that conspiracy theories are all fun and games until you're on the receiving end of being the victim of one. And so that's why, for instance, on my channel, I don't truck with conspiracy theorists at all. I take an evidence-based approach. And if you don't have evidence for your claims, then stay the hell away from me.
Or the way that evidence can be manipulated. In light of the satanic panic, of course, this is all vapor, but the way that evidence is used by some people within conspiracy-minded groups, that it can be very harmful. I imagine if we went back to Nazi Germany and we listened to the propaganda and listened to the Third Reich, and they're preaching on the issues of Jews and people that are, of course, minorities in the situation, like they probably had like a spin on so many things that made it convincing to Germans to participate in this action. Would I be wrong in that, or?
I mean, of course, there's always nothing. They're certainly not making up things out of the air. There's a really great edition of Mein Kampf, actually, that I would encourage people to get if they have if they know German. The state of Weimar has put out an entire huge two-volume edition of Mein Kampf. The first version published in Germany since the war, and he goes all the way through Mein Kampf and looks at every single claim Hitler makes and checks him on it. And he sometimes will get stuff half right, but he always mentions half of what's there. And they show like, no, he mentions this newspaper article, but the newspaper article doesn't actually say that. He's manipulating it to get it to agree with what he wants. So the systematic bending of the truth is a very powerful technique. But again, I don't want to deal in half-truths and manipulated truths. I want to deal with evidence and go where the evidence actually leads.
You know what? I think even Supernatural did one, now that I'm thinking about it.
Leads us, as opposed to, there's a cult of devil worshippers, let me find evidence for that. Or, white people from Atlantis made civilization, let me go find evidence of that. That's not scientific. That's not how we approach things from a scientific point of view. We let the evidence build up our theories. We don't take a theory then go looking for evidence.
That's a great point. I love that about you. That's why I was so drawn to you. I think you were drawn back. We mutually were drawn to each other for this whole reason. And that's what we need in light of all the crazy stuff that goes on out there. We need this. So as far as the satanic panic goes, would you say that it has ended?
I think it's morphed. The satanic panic relies on mythological tropes that go back to the Middle Ages, sort of anti-Semitic tropes that go back to the Middle Ages, and even some of these tropes that go back to the anti-Cathar crusades of the 13th century. So I would say that because those mythological tropes are just so baked into Western civilization, they don't end. They just sort of mutate through time. The satanic panic is a mutation of earlier panics occurred, like the witch panics of the early modern period. And so I would say that what's happened is primarily it's mutated again, and the mutation that's currently around is QAnon. QAnon is the current version of that mutation, which is still a version of the idea that elite Satanists, globalists are engaged in somehow large-scale child abuse in the interest of draining their adrenochrome, which again is just a version of the blood libel, the idea that Jews secretly murdered children in order to use their blood for matzah or other kinds of things. So it's the exact same story with just a new twist and a new spin. And also I would say that half the time they're talking about globalists, it's just really anti-Semitism. The amount of times it's the globalists or it's Soros. I'm like, just come out and say that you're a Nazi. Let's not beat around the bush around this. And again, you look at some of the claims made by this, and during the Satanic Panic, you get these enormously bizarre claims like Dungeons and Dragons calls kids to become Satanists and kill each other or commit suicide, God forbid. There's no evidence for that, and there's evidence to the contrary. Role-playing games actually.
Okay, I'm looking for the episode. I can't find the shot. It's the one where it's the magicians. It's the one where I think they're already in the Narnia land, and the gods are eating humans or whatever, and it's that gross god that I think is the brother of the one that got killed, and then he's eating him. It's this guy. Look, check it out. This guy's eating some believers or something like that. Or maybe he's being eaten by bigger gods. I don't remember. Let's see, where is it? But basically, the gods eat people. Oh, is that it? Is that the episode? Is it episode 4, season? Is it? I'm sorry. Is it season 4, episode 6? Is that the episode I'm thinking of? Where is it? Because they cross over to the land, and then they start eating. I think it's here. I miss that guy. The character, not the actor. Sure, the actor's doing well.
Cooperative behavior. In fact, people who play role-playing games are actually contraindicated for criminal activity. It's like literally the opposite of what they claimed. I'm pretty sure you remember the days where they said that there was all kinds of backwards talking and heavy metal music that made people do stuff, right? And people forget that, Ozzy Osbourne and
Okay, that's 2 hours. I said I was going to stop at 2 hours. I got to work out. I don't have work tomorrow, so I will do so I'm going to try to do, I don't want to stream every day. I'm going to try to do 3 streams or 4 streams a week, maybe 3 streams a week of religious stuff, and then 3 streams video games. For the video game stuff, we'll talk religion or philosophy or whatever while I'm gaming. That's fine. And what I'm going to do is, for now, I'm going to dual stream. And then, and I want to put up all my VODs onto my gaming channel here on YouTube. So I'm going to archive everything onto my YouTube, my gaming channel, and then I'm going to do everything else on the other channel. So this channel is going to have some gaming content for a short amount of time, not forever. It's just that this one's monetized. This one has the promotions. This one has the larger algorithm outreach. So I want my gaming channel to do better, which means I need to highlight it in advertisement on this channel, because they're both YouTube channels, so no conflict of interest. What? I said I look. I'm 1 minute and 20 seconds over. Okay. Yes, you're very good at telling time for a cat. She's upset. I gotta go. Let's do the outro music. And she even reached up for me. She's like, oh, now she's okay. Oh, darn it. Here, look here. Wait. Do you wanna talk to the people? No, you don't want to talk to the people. You're just gonna sit here on my lap? Okay. And she's putting her head into my armpit. I don't even know what that's about. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know what she's doing. Hi. Oh, you're making the cute face. I think she's jealous because I saved a mama cat who was attacked. I saved the mama cat, and I think she's jealous. I think she's worried her position is threatened or something. All right. Let's play the music and let's call it a night, shall we?
Never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test. Expect nothing less, you check as I'm chess. What's happening next? Yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson. He got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold an obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take your redemption. Just kill no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People let sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try to change, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place. I wanna be first, work till it hurts. Dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you